Why save the world? That's your question?
Why does the world need saving?
I've seen this movie. We've all seen this movie, and we know it does not end well.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Pluribus. If episode 1 felt like a slow burn of existential dread, episode 2 delivers on the promise of a complex and layered conversation that truly defines what the show could be about, which is the question of free will. We also meet more of the uninfected characters of the show. And Carol has a power which exposes the hive mind's greatest weakness. With that said, let's dissect this episode where Carol goes from unwilling helper to global existential threat and why saving the world might be the last thing the world wants. Full spoilers ahead. We open this episode overseas where we're introduced to a new character by the name of Zosa, who will prove to be very important in this episode. Zosa is one of the infected, part of what we're starting to understand as the collective consciousness, the hive mind. Her task, and task of others like her, is global cleanup. They're removing the bodies of those who, for reasons still unknown, didn't survive the virus's spread. This opening being a reminder that this just isn't a wave of euphoria, it's a societal reset and many didn't make it. We watch as Zosa takes to the skies in a cargo plane, and I'm not sure if it was carrying anything of importance besides Zosa herself, as she flies to where she's needed above the others continuing their cleanup. Now, as we come to now understand, those infected with the virus, they don't just share a sense of well-being, they also share knowledge, and instant knowledge. It's like being plugged into the ultimate cheat code, the Matrix, with any skill or information downloaded into their brains within seconds. For example, being able to fly any aircraft, to perform a complex surgery, it's all at their fingertips. Speaking of fingerprints, we get our first look at the new opening credit sequence with the title of the show, and we have this eerie yet almost angelical music playing in the background. To me, the show's title sequence itself mirrors the virus's relentless spread, with the lettering appearing to be in the form of fingerprints. It's like a recurring motif suggesting how the virus is literally becoming their new identity. Day 00, hour 11, 26 minutes and 31 seconds of the new world, 11 hours since the last scene of last episode. We cut to Carol waking up with a bottle of alcohol next to her, and perhaps clinging to the desperate hope that the previous night was just a nightmare. But unfortunately, the reality is very much real. She turns, and there's Helen, who's unfortunately still dead. Carol grabs a blanket, and this blanket must hold some sentimental value for her and Helen, as she wraps Helen's body in it and proceeds to go outside and bury her in their backyard. Meanwhile, Zosa arrives at her destination and is no other than Albuquerque. Here we watch the infected operate with an unsettling efficiency. Zosa is clean, dressed, and prepared, almost like royalty, but in reality, she's being prepared to becoming a familiar face to Carol. It was fascinating to observe how they interact, especially as they gear up to engage with someone like Carol. Now, if you all were paying attention, up until this point in this episode, not a single word has been spoken, which is crazy to think about because we know that there are 8 billion thoughts that are being shared amongst the hive mind. Transformed and radiating with a gentle warmth, Zosa, with a friendly and welcoming presence, she pays Carol a visit.
Hello? You okay? Sorry, we didn't mean to startle you.
She offers Carol a bottle of water, suggesting that she needs to take a break from all her digging. As she tells Carol, they've been watching her, apparently from a drone 40,000 feet in the air. Now, Carol, however, is deeply suspicious of this bottle of water. She fears the water might be tampered with, a way to turn her into one of them. But Zosa assures her, stating that it's just water, and more importantly, they're months away from the point where they can actually figure out a way to change her into one of them. Now, even after learning that the person running the factory responsible for the distribution of this water bottle, and also the fact that every medical advisor on Earth suggests that Carol drinks this water bottle to avoid heat exhaustion, we watch as Carol takes that water bottle and pours it out in front of her. Now, Carol's refusal to trust is perhaps the very thing that could save her, and maybe even the world. Now, the hive mind can sense that Carol's getting upset, and this is very important. It suggests that Carol's individual emotional responses are capable of disrupting their perfect harmony. Zosa starts to leave, but Carol recognizes something familiar about her. As Carol runs back in her house and she grabs one of her books and she places that book up to Zosa's face and she realizes it looks familiar to her lead character, Raban. Now, remember Carol and Helen's last conversation outside the bar?
You want to answer a few questions for them? What, now? No.
Do a quick one. Let me know you're paying attention. Carol, my husband says Raban can be my hall pass, which I don't think is fair since Raban's not a real live person, although I wish he was. In real life, was there an actual man you were thinking of when you came up with Raban? That's hilarious. You want to tell the truth?
Well, we know that Raban is a man in the book, but originally he was supposed to be a woman, but only Carol and Helen knew this, which brings the question, how could the hive mind know that detail if they don't read minds? Now, before we go into the reveal, I thought this was a very kind of meta moment for the show, because if you all do not know, Vince Gilligan, the creator of the show, he has said in various interviews that originally when he came up with this show idea about 10 years ago, the main character was supposed to be a man.
Started thinking about this show. The early stirrings of this show, if you will, started probably 8 or 9 years ago. I had this idea about a guy who the world is really, really nice to. And I did something I've never really done before this series. I wrote the series specifically for one actor, Ray.
Now back to the conversation. Zosa, thinking she's giving Carol some peace of mind, she reveals a piece of unsettling information. Just before Helen died, she joined the collective. Her memories are with them now. Now this actually explains why Helen was smiling at Carol before she died. Now obviously this shatters Carol. She explodes, pushing Zosa away, her grief and her anger getting the better of her, as she proceeds to blame the hive mind for Helen's death, unleashing a torment of raw, visceral emotion. Now, this emotional outburst, this raw display of free will and unfiltered emotion has a devastating effect, as we watch Zosa collapses and has a seizure. Now Carol, unaware of the monumental destruction she just caused, speeds off in her truck to get some help. Now, this reaction from Zosa is extremely important. Carol's emotional defiance has just sent a shockwave through the hive mind, causing massive destruction, even death, far beyond this isolated encounter. It's a stark illustration of the power of individual consciousness against a unified force. Now, while driving, Carol encounters a group of infected who were removing a small plane from a church before she created this massive disturbance. She rushes to help, unaware or perhaps momentarily forgetting that these are infected. Now, I'm not sure if Carol had enough time to distinguish between this maybe being a group of regular people or infected. Regardless, to me, this act proves that despite her overwhelming grief and anger, Carol still possesses fundamental empathy. She sees people in need, even if their bodies are no longer their own. Now, before leaving, notice that one of the infected is badly wounded, foreshadowing what Carol's negativity can do. Now we watch as Carol's back home now and Zosa's gone, but before she left Carol with some much needed garden supplies for the burial of Helen. Carol ends up calling the number that she was given for help and invites the female Raban back over. Now Zosa back in Carol's backyard as Carol asks her if she was the reason she froze up earlier, as she tells her that she was affected by her emotions, particularly the negative ones that's directed at them. Now this explains what happened with that group that we just saw, as Carol affected the collective mind. Better yet, she affected the entire world. Again, it wasn't just a local seizure. Carol's frustration and negativity affect the entire hive mind, essentially acting as an invisible and catastrophic EMP. Now it's here that Carol learns that she was responsible for right now an unknown number of deaths during her negative reaction. Now let's talk about Carol's powers in this whole situation with the negativity. This clearly is a major weakness to the virus, having negativity thrown their way. Carol has a weapon to use against the virus, but obviously using it results in lethal collateral damage. It's a true ethical dilemma. Obviously, this isn't the best option considering the massive catastrophic results that it has, but could it be used as a last-ditch effort to Carol's advantage against the collective mind if push comes to shove? Or at the very least, if she ever needed to have a distraction or to create a distraction, she could use this as a way to buy some time and use it in a case of emergency. Now, Carol at this point is exhausted, but she continues with her burying of Helen. But this is where the hive mind proves it can be useful, as we watch a helicopter arrives and drops off some heavy-duty equipment, demonstrating the collective's ability to effectively manage high-level logistics. With Helen now buried, Carol gets a better understanding of what is later revealed as the joining.
The astronauts up in the space station, are they like you?
They are.
And everybody at the South Pole? And on nuclear submarines, missile silos, Area 51?
Yes. We made a point of reaching them early on. That's kind of the best way to do it.
As she basically has the origin of the virus explained to her again, which ties back to the airbase shutdown that we saw back in episode 1. There's also a new discovery of a new uninfected, making it now 13 verified individuals worldwide. Now, we don't actually get to meet this individual in this episode, but I wonder if we'll do at some point. And also, I wonder if we'll start to see more uninfected emerge. Now, Carol finds out that her meltdown earlier resulted in one of the uninfected getting injured. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but in this moment, Carol sets up a meeting with the 5 uninfected who can speak English, and within seconds, the meeting is set up. Now on a Wayfair plane, yes, the same airline from the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul shows, we watch as Carol boards to meet the others. The hive mind has high hopes for this ongoing gathering, but they warn Carol that they can't protect them from one another when they all come together, meaning that if this goes south, they can't intervene because, as we'll find out later, the hive mind can't be involved with anything involving violence. Now having landed in Bilbao, Carol meets the others.
Otombayer. Pleased to meet you.
Otombayer.
Otombayer.
Otombayer. Okay, pleased to meet you.
It's Shumei. Hello.
Hello, Shumei.
Kusimayu.
Kusumayo, that's a lovely name.
I'm Lakshmi.
Lakshmi. Great to meet you.
Now you'll notice that Lakshmi has a bandage on her head and doesn't shake Carol's hand like the others did, and there's a reason for that. Now I want to point out the obvious thing here, and that is that this moment immediately establishes Carol's isolation. While Carol's alone, the others have their infected family members with them. Their loved ones, though changed, are happy, creating a personal, complex relationship with the hive mind. This difference will prove to be key for the upcoming conversations. Obviously, Carol wants her life back, while the others have accepted or even embraced their new normal. Now, we meet the last attendee by the name of Kumba, who arrives in spectacular fashion, and it is the Air Force One. We see immediately that Kumba has fully exploited the new order, surrounding himself with beautiful, compliant, infected women. One can only imagine the things he's requested of the hive mind to fulfill his happiness. Again, we can see the others are not like Carol. They're nowhere near as stressed out about this whole situation. Again, the others with their families have them at their happiest, and Kumba, while by himself, has had the infected listening and doing everything he's requested. What's there to complain about, right? Except for that little thing called free will. Who needs or wants that, right? Now, Carol demands privacy and clears the room of all of the infected. She then immediately asks the essential question: what do they do, and how do they find the cure? As the others all look at Carol with a look of surprise. Kumba speaks first, embracing the episode's major thematic shift. Why save the world? And the others seem to agree. Lakshmi brings up Carol's meltdown the other day, and that resulted in her being in a car accident causing the death of her grandfather, and that explains why she's not a fan of Carol. Lakshmi refuses to accept that her family is no longer who they were before the virus. We watch as Kumba details the utopian reality post-virus.
As we speak, no one is being robbed or murdered. No one is in prison. The color of one's skin, by all accounts, now meaningless.
A perfect sense of peace. Now, this is where the ethical argument reaches a fever pitch when Kusumayu admits that she wants the virus. She wants the happiness the hive mind describes. As we see, the others all view Carol's obsession with free will and normalcy as misplaced. They've all asked what it's like to be happy all the time, and they're surprised that Carol hasn't. Let me tell y'all, man, there was no action in this scene, obviously, or anything of pure entertainment going on, but this very conversation had me hooked on every single word. This was what I was expecting to see with this show, this very complex and layered and complicated conversation that's going on in this very scene. It almost has this heaven on earth vibe going on, or before the original sin was committed by Adam and Eve, where the world was in peace and harmony before temptation destroyed it all. I love this philosophical question about what would one do in this very position. I mean, let's sit back and think about this if this happened in our reality. Imagine a world of pure happiness with no crime and no hatred, but obviously the catch being zero free will for most. Now, my question for you all in the comments, would you all accept that world? More importantly, would you want to be one of the infected, blissfully unaware, or uninfected, burdened with the choice, but living amongst the blissful? This isn't just hypothetical in the world of this show, it's the core dilemma Pluribus throws at us as an audience, and it had me absolutely captivated. This scene not only gave us a glimpse of how other uninfected feel, but it sets the stage for a fascinating exploration of individual versus collective happiness. Now, obviously this is only half of the uninfected, but I am curious if the others feel similar to this group or if they feel more similar to Carol about the new world. Now, will Carol pay them a visit at some point despite the language barrier? Now, this is only part of another conversation coming up soon, but right now it's time for lunch.
Who's hungry? I myself am famished.
Now, despite having the best meals nearby available to them, the hive mind wasn't able to provide Kumba with a lobster he requested because we find out they don't kill. It's not in their nature to kill any living creature on this planet. Now, the conversation shifts to the joining itself. Carol points out the truth. There was no choice for humanity.
I don't recall anybody getting a vote on whether or not they wanted the joining.
We ourselves have no choice.
For us, it's a biological imperative, like breathing.
We learned that the initial phase was surprisingly smooth, thousands joining daily without a reported death. But then humanity intervened. The military got involved and things were sped up, and tragically, over 866 million plus people end up unfortunately dying. Now, obviously, the sheer scale of that loss is staggering, but it leaves me still wondering, why did some, like Helen, fail to take to the infection? Again, is it genetic? Is it scientific? Is it a flaw in the design itself? Now, to make matters worse with Carol barely holding it together, she learns that her previous meltdown the day before, her emotional outburst, was directly responsible for the deaths of 11 million people. Now, obviously, in disbelief of the people she was responsible for indirectly killing, and knowing that none of the others shares Carol's desire to fixing the situation, we watch as Carol decides it's time to leave, but before leaving, she has a message for all of them. Obviously now full of guilt and anger and also alcohol, Carol tells all of the non-infected that they're all traitors to the human race.
You are traitors. You are traitors to the human race!
As Carol walks away, she ends up passing out, only to freak out again when the infected try to help her out, triggering another global seizure, including the various members of the unaffected families. Obviously, the terrifying implications: more deaths, more suffering. Now, I do wonder if when they experience these symptoms, does the actual person, the non-infected, come to, and they're actually themselves during that time trying to maybe recapture their mind and body? Also, I should have mentioned this earlier, but seeing the others with their families, I wonder if Carol, besides having Helen, does she have any other close friends or family members that the hive mind will use to maybe get Carol to get a better understanding of how wonderful the happiness is? Now, obviously at this point, you get the sense that the hive mind knows that they don't probably have to worry about the others that are not affected. But when it comes to Carol, despite the hive mind not having a negative thought or negative emotions, I would imagine that they're still slightly probably scared of Carol because of her stance against not being able to trust the infected. What will the hive mind do to get Carol to trust them? That will be very interesting to watch moving forward, and I believe Zosa will be that answer. Now, as we come to a close of this episode, Carol wakes up and calls the hive mind and learns that only one of the 5 uninfected stayed behind after her recent meltdown, and that individual is her second favorite person.
Good morning, Carol.
Carol.
Now, Kumba approaches Carol with a proposition. He wants to go to Vegas, and he wants Zosa to join him. His reasoning? Well, he made a connection with Zosa, and since she's Carol's personal chaperone, he needs her permission.
Accompany you for what? Oh, Jesus Christ.
What can I say? In the past day, I've spent time with her, gotten to know her, learned her name.
Now, the hive mind can't choose between them because it would upset one of them. Now, speaking of getting upset, we see Carol begins losing her temper again, but she stops this time because obviously more lives will end, as Carol, without saying it, basically gives Zosa the permission to leaving to go to Vegas. Now, we watch as Zosa boards a plane with Kumba, but she looks back at Carol, and that look is loaded with something more than mere compliance. To me, it was like a flicker of doubt, perhaps a plea. And something inside Carol knows this isn't right. As our final shot shows Carol forcing her plane to stop, and she stands in front of the Air Force One with her hands raised, alluding to her demanding Zosa be brought back to her. Now, going back to that look that Zosa gave her, did Zosa's look betray a weakness, a desperate desire not to go? And the Carol of it all, was Carol's act less about Zosa being protected and more about denying Kumba, reminding him that even in the perfect world, he can't have everything he wants? Now, after the second episode, there's still some lingering questions about what the hell is actually going on. And honestly, I love that about the show so far. But questions that come to mind is, who sent the signal to Earth, if indeed this is Earth? Are they spreading the joining across different planets? What are the true negative effects of negativity on the infected beyond the global seizures? And will other uninfected learn to weaponize this like Carol has? Will we meet the uninfected group soon? Now, as far as the 866 million plus people that died, I would imagine a lot of them were unfortunately in the middle of doing something that will cause harm to them if they had a seizure, a la driving or flying in the middle of when the virus was being spread out. But for someone like Helen, why did she die? Again, was it something genetic, was it scientific, or something else that led to their deaths? Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this second episode, and I'm in love with this show. This second episode was a masterclass in psychological science fiction, and what I love about science fiction, these type of deepening questions about humanity and free will, and I'm just so immersed in this world, and I just can't wait to see more. Again, from the start of this episode, not having any dialogue for the first 10 minutes really set the tone for this episode because it knew that there were going to be a lot of heavy conversations later. I really enjoyed the new characters we were introduced to in this episode because it adds this other layer and it adds this other perspective to how people can accept this new reality, but maybe they haven't accepted the reality in a way because they haven't accepted the loss of who their loved ones used to be. Even looking at someone like Kumba, who I hope we get more of because he's such a fascinating character to me, this man who fully embraces the pleasures of this new worry-free world and what it has to offer, even though there are probably parameters amongst the hive mind. But honestly, the person that stood out to me in this episode was Zosa. The actress playing her was simply excellent. Her voice, her demeanor, her subtle presence was just so compelling. And I'm so curious to see what type of relationship she and Carol's going to forge moving forward. I honestly think that this episode hints at something deep and insignificant between the two, especially considering the hive mind's perspective. Again, them knowing that Carol doesn't trust the hive mind and how she can use her anger towards them presents a unique challenge to them. Again, they're going to need someone to bridge that gap, and I believe Zosa is that chosen answer. With all that said, I think that's a great place to end this week's breakdown of episode 2 of season 1 of Pluribus. Now, the big question I have for you all, what did you think about this second episode, and what did you think about the first 2 episodes overall? As it pertains to the second episode, what did you like, dislike? What were your feelings about the philosophical questions that were posed? What theories, predictions, major takeaways did you have? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments below. Thank you all for watching or listening to my breakdown. Now, if you all have made it to this point in the breakdown, I appreciate the support. The secret word for this particular episode, put in the comments right now, #ignorance-is-bliss. Now, if you all enjoyed yourself and would love for me to continue breaking down Pluribus week to week, please remember to hit that like button. And if you're on YouTube, hit the hype button as well. I would really appreciate the support. Also, if you all can share this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about these type of shows and the type of conversations this show has to offer. But more importantly, please consider subscribing to my channel today for more Pluribus videos and so much more. Now, if you all are listening to this via Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you all get your podcasts from, I appreciate you all listening or downloading this podcast. Do me a favor, share the podcast. Leave your thoughts about these 2 episodes in the comments below, and also consider subscribing and following the podcast and leaving me a review and a rating. I would appreciate it. All right, to my sci-fi lovers out there, thank you again for watching. Until next time, remember you all are awesome. Stay safe out there. And also remember, happiness is a mindset. I'll see you all again soon.